Artlist.io.
Episode of Teenage Youth. Today I have a special guest with me, Ziran. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
Pretty good. So before we get started, tell them a little about yourself, where they can find you and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm from India and I work as a counseling psychologist or a therapist. And it's been 3 years that I have been in this field. So I take individual sessions, work around mental health issues like anxiety, stress, depression, relationship concerns, grief, trauma, and many more. So, and, doing podcasts or writing blogs on certain concerns related to mental health, thing that I like to do as a part of Aware.
Okay. And for the record, can you state your full name so people know exactly who you are?
Yeah, so I am Simran Pade. Yes, I'm from Kolkata, West Bengal, a city in India.
All right. So further to do, that's Ziran Paki and her connection to psychology and mental health. And as a result, today's episode is going to be mental health from A to Z, and we're going to do conditions and factors that affect teenage mental health. So typically when we think of mental health, we think of the likelihood, what they're thinking, how they're feeling, what things are going on, what encompasses mental health as a perspective in your field of study.
Yes, essentially, when we think of mental health, it's basically a still growing, field in India because people are not much open to sharing their emotions and feelings right now. But yes, I would say it's much better than years ago, wherein be it adolescents, be it teens, be it adults are open to at least, trying out therapy.
Okay. When it comes to mental health of teenagers, still developing, so there's still a lot of factors like the environment they grow up in, the parent figures they have, education, also relationships is a big factor in how they affect the mental health, the experiences they have. So it's very vital that during this stage that they have a decent upbringing. I wouldn't say they have to have the best, but they should have something of more value, even if it's not as good, still something to hold on to keep on a strong mental.
Okay. Well, see, I wouldn't say that, there's a perfect, as you said, that, there's nothing as a perfect environment or a perfect parenting style. It's just that I have always observed that if you have an open space where you can express your opinions or express how you're feeling, I think that's what people need today. People need to be heard rather than, be told that don't do that, or, you should have done this. This was a better option. So in times of crisis, it's just that, let the other person speak, let them feel heard, because in today's time, nobody has the, courtesy or maybe time to hear other people. They just want to blabber their concerns, their issues, and they are looking forward to maybe moving to the next step in life.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, getting to that next step to young adult is very important. It's so vital how much influence is actually during your time as a teenager that don't actually realize.
Yeah, like, the environment, the peer support or the peer group that you are in do influence you a lot, and how they treat you or how you look at them and how much you look up to them. There are a lot of factors that affect while growing up.
Oh, yeah. And, the older you get as a teenager, the closer you get to becoming of age and all different aspects of who not who you are, but something you want to be, or versions of what you want to be when you're young.
Yeah.
You get close to those mentality perspectives that you had once before, and then you go back on habit, trying to replicate something of an idea that you had before. You just do it in a different way. So there is like small mannerism, stuff like that is going to stay with you to a certain point. So that also has great influence as well.
Yeah, that does.
All right. So let's start with letter A for attention deficit high activity disorder, or ADHD. So why is that important to teenage?
See, I wouldn't say that something is very important or something is least important. It's just that to be aware of what you're going through is most important. To be aware of how it is making you feel and what you're going through, and voice that out. So if we come to ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, it's basically a mixture of three things, that is lack of attention, being hyperactive, as well as being impulsive. So if you find all these three things in yourselves, then of course, along with many other symptoms and a lot of diagnosis, then with the help of a professional, you can see it that you do suffer or are having ADHD. But then there are many people who just have same lack of attention. So then it goes on to ADD, which is attention deficit disorder.
Okay.
So
And,
basically, it's basically lack of attention, unable to focus on work, or being impulsive means maybe answering before the other person has completed their question, or taking irrational decisions, like spontaneous decisions without thinking, or speaking without thinking.
ADHD is something that affects the person who has it, but also the people that actually have cells. If you're not a teenager that has it, then keep in perspective that the behavior that they're exemplifying is not necessarily them being different. It is them having a condition that is triggering certain behaviors within the condition. And as a result, also understand that if they have ADHD and know it, try to be welcome to them. Don't try to exclude the behavior thinking that it's going to get you somewhere. All that's going to do is isolate us with something like ADHD or anything similar, because you understand that.
Yeah, I agree to that. Because see, like if we take up teens, what happens is, if they're not studying, or if they are not getting good grades, the parents or teachers often think that they are not disciplined enough, or they're not putting much effort. But they don't realize that the child might be actually facing attention issues, might be actually facing certain issues related to reading or writing, which could be learning issues, which we might cover later. But here, like in a school setup, say for example, if the child is just unable to sit in one place, or keeps on moving during the class, what the teacher thinks is the child is notorious.
Yeah.
The kid is disturbing others.
Yeah.
They need to understand what hyperactivity is because of ADHD.
Yeah. So when you see someone with it, have a mind's eye, be welcome to them. Don't exclude them from strange behavior you don't understand, because you might not be able to, but also know that they can use a friend. So B, that's for attention deficit disorder. B is going to be for body image. So let's go with body image. Body image is very applicable to your self-awareness of who you are, what your body actually looks like to other people, and how you want that image to be portrayed to them. And that it portrays influenced by the media, people around you, and society. And it's very a niche part of society that caters to a specific look or specific way to look.
Oh, 100% I agree to you, because today people get too much influenced by what's going on social media, and then they forget to cater to their self-care or self-love. So today, I would say like most of the teens do face body image issues, because they either feel that they're too thin, too skinny, or too bulky. They're never satisfied with the way they look. It could be that they are in a right body type, or I wouldn't say right, but they are in the ideal body type or body shape. But then they do try to find out certain of the other concerns regarding that. Like, maybe even if they're standing in front of the mirror, they keep on staring at themselves and thinking that this outfit will not fit me correctly. I don't look great in this outfit. Or what shall I do to change this part of my body? Or what shall I do to look better?
Yeah. Body.
And much of it is influenced by the social media. Much of it is influenced by what your friends are doing, what your peers are doing. If they are wearing certain type of outfit, you will feel that to fit into that social setting, you want to do the same.
Yeah, that's pretty much body image. So with bipolar, people tend to mistake for depression and other stuff. But when someone has that condition, it's typically a neurological condition where someone else is having symptoms of depression, but other mood swings and overall burst of anger, sadness, depending on what is going on, if they have bipolar 1 or bipolar 2, there's different effects and different symptoms associated. Usually it's by medication to deal with it because of the stages that you are at.
Yeah. So what happens with bipolar is basically you are at your extreme, and there are two phases of one of depression and the other of mania. So when you are in the phase of your depression, you feel low on energy. You feel that you don't want to get out of bed to work. You feel like, staying alone, not going meeting your friend. It's just lethargy and low on energy overall. And your mood is also not that great. But when your phase shifts and when you're on your mania phase, it's basically the opposite. You're too excited about everything. You want to do everything at once, probably complete your week's work in a day. And you would like to do everything very jumpy, excited. So that comes in phases. And as you mentioned it correctly, the need of medication depends on the intensity of the condition. So, yes, both medication and therapy can be helpful to modify the level of your hormones by medication, and by therapy help you balance, the behavior.
Another thing with bipolar, and people might think it's very polarizing. I don't really think so because it's not as uncommon as people might think. It's actually becoming more common, people having it, but the open communication along with it sometimes can be different because of the stigma that people think that bipolar diagnosis is.
See, honestly, if you measure it in that terms, then there are many people who don't want to accept they're going through it. So there can be denial in any form of condition. So that's completely up to your perspective, how you are dealing with it and how open accepting it. Because see, in case of physical health issues, we are readily accepting if we have a cold or if we have a fever. But then when it comes to mental health, not everyone is open to accepting that they are going through a mental health condition.
Yeah, pretty much. You don't want to deny it, but also at the same time, you feel like you don't have a choice. So with that, that is body image and bipolar. Letter B. Letter C is going to cover communication issues. Teens face a lot of different communication issues. For example, how to express themselves, how to tell the truth, how to come to them when something happened, but don't know actually how to say it. Maybe talk about feelings, but also in times of help, how they're going to actually say they need help. So there's different ways communication can come off to be difficult or not what you have. Well, you might excel at this, but when it comes to, say, withholding the truth, it happens very too often. It causes a lot more communication, and how you talk to people affects that as well.
Yes, communication in today's time has been the major issues, be in workspace, personal relations, or so otherwise. And I generally believe that if you are able to communicate with others and if you're able to put your point forward, that's the best way of resolving any kind of, because at least you're satisfied with the fact that you are putting your opinion forward. But in the other situation where you're unable to communicate, it just is a constant feeling of distress and discomfort because you're hanging out with your friends, you're hanging out with a set of people, but you're unable to open up in that space. So you're always feeling some kind of suffocation.
Yeah. And, communication can do with peers and friends and different factions of the school environment. Also have extracurricular activities where it can be difficult if you are singled out, don't know how to talk to them. It can be a time that's challenging, but also weird to navigate.
Yes. As you mentioned correctly, that in a school environment, there can be a lot of ways where you communicate. Like if you are feeling there's something you don't understand, or there's some bullying happening around you, or some teasing happening around you, until and unless you go and communicate, it's not going to happen. But then for that communication to happen, people around them, the social people or the social setup, they also have to provide an environment where they can speak about.
Yep. So, communication can be an entire topic, how to do it, but that's like a brief overview of this particular topic for mental health. So the next
Yeah.
is D for depression. What is depression?
Right. So today people are using this word very lightly that, I am depressed or I'm feeling so. But then most of them maybe do not know how it feels when you're in depression. So you might feel very low. You might be not getting out of bed. You feel tired even after a good sleep, or even feel exhausted if you've not done anything throughout the day. You feel like, it's better to stay alone. There's no purpose in life, or, there's no worth living, or you might feel that nobody understands me. And maybe there are, of course, a lot of questions about self as well, that, am I in this position today? It's better if I was not there. So all these feelings together constitutes the depression, along with many others, definitely. But it needs a proper consistency of symptoms according to the ICD or DSM, or 6 months consistent symptoms to, diagnose yourselves, and that it can again only be done by optional. So there are a lot of mood changes, a lot of sleep and eating issues, there are a lot of changes in your thought, in your daily routine. So a lot of things can be all, disrupted. And, there's a very thin line between feeling sad, grief, and
Yeah.
so people often confuse these things.
Question in a nutshell is basically you have the symptoms of what could be considered, your mood going down, but as well, it's treatable, very much treatable. It's very on the spectrum of mental health. It's very generalized, so anyone can get it. But it's not necessarily something that you have to be diagnosed with to have it. You get it by going through factors that will make you get it. So anyone can get depression. It's not a diagnosed by genetics. It's not anything like that. So it's very common to have it occur, but knowing how to treat it is very important. And with that, that is depression.
Yeah, I would like to add on to your last point. It can be genetic if there's a history of depression in your family. So there are high chances that you might also get into, but there's no surety that you will just. So obviously, knowing the family history in terms of any kind of mental health condition is a benefit.
So that's depression. And E is eating disorder. So we put eating disorders as general for encompasses any eating disorder. Eating disorder is the change in which your eating is not sufficient as a normal way of eating, and typically can either make you eat more, eat thin, not get enough nutrients. Those different psychological conditions were happening. You may only eat certain foods with certain colors or even textures, or maybe go for periods not eating at all, or you go through periods where you just eat all at once. So it really depends on the actual type of eating disorder you have and what's happening in your body when you.
Yes. So as I said earlier, this also can relate to what due to certain body image type, you tend to eat less, or you binge eat and then puke so that you feel satisfied, or when you're in a stressful situation, you tend to get satisfaction or relief from food. So there are different types of food issues that we can say. There are people who can go days without eating and not feel hungry. So that can come with depression, that can come with stress, that can come with PTSD, and there are also body image issues as well. And there are phases where people eat a lot, which can equally come in the same category like depression, stress. So it's completely individual based. Today, if maybe an individual is stressed, they might want to binge eat because they find comfort in that food. They find relief in that food. So they continuously eat. And on the other hand, there might be people who don't feel hungry because they're overthinking. They are stressed about something. So they feel like, I just don't want to eat. There can be bulimia, there could be anorexia. So there are a lot of eating disorders also, which to some extent affect their self-confidence and the way they look at themselves as well.
That's eating disorders. Pretty much it's generalized. So depending on which diagnosis you have, which the eating disorder it is, that's the sometimes behavior, and not everyone is the same. Different symptoms with different eating disorders also affect different people in different ways, but typically it's evolving eating in a way that is not normal or considered to be unhealthy. So F is facing rejection.
Yes.
So rejections is interesting because in any teenage relationship, going out there and saying how you feel or being a friend to someone and then not having that camaraderie to, I accept, can be a very vital factor in relationship building, but also, things in life. I think do it a resume, get accepted, but then to get rejected, that's also another rejection that they need to, it's part of life in a way. But also it's very building of the fact that if they have it, then they can, experience it.
Yes, it's really difficult to, accept rejection. And it also depends on the way that's conveyed, like the conversation that's happening while the rejection is taking place. Because there are many people who just bluntly put out their thoughts and without thinking about what or how it will affect the other person. So facing rejection, you can definitely call it like in terms of relationship, in terms of say having a career choice, or if we talk about teens, it's the academics that they're worried about and how they would, go with that report or go with that mark sheet to their parents. So there comes in a lot of questions like, what will they think about me? Will they judge me or not? Will they scold me? Will they punish me? So there are a lot of thoughts around that as well. But the best way to face rejection, as I said earlier, communication is the key for everything. So if you know how to communicate it and if you know how to do it in a manner that doesn't offend the other person's feelings, is the best.
Yep. Yeah. So G, that's facing rejections. G is basically generalized anxiety disorder of grief. In a nutshell, what is that? How it applies to teenage.
Yes. So that's something basically when you start to stress over small things like everything, like if you want to go out, what outfit you will get, if you want to go to school or what lunch you want to take, if you have to give a presentation, how would you start, what will you make, or thinking about the outcome, will or the faculty or will the professor like that or not, what will be his or her feedback. So when you start to stress, overthink, or get anxious about everything in life, day-to-day life, that's basically which comes as generalized anxiety disorder, which is on a more daily life situation, whereas anxiety disorder might have a particular triggers, particular cause, particular incident after which it started.
Yep. So that's generalized anxiety disorder. And typically people with have it, they just common day situations that they have in life comes in, they might be stressed about it, some point depending on how it's being relayed. And as a result, it creates this anxiety of things that you might encounter. As a result, knowing the triggers is very important. H is hypertension and overthinking.
Yeah, it somewhere is related to again anxiety only because when you tend to overthink. So how this overthinking began is basically when you start to focus more on either the past or the future, or focus on what others will think or how others would react. So and you constantly go in that zone, in that phase where you start with one thought and you reach some other thought and it's a loop, and then you are just wasting your hours into this thought process, and then you can't focus at the task at hand. You cannot do anything else because you're just thinking about something that's not even happening in that present. So when you are away from the present moment, when you're either in your past or future, that is where overthinking begins. And it could be due to your past experiences. Say, for example, if there's a child who's failed a math exam and he's an upcoming exam for the same subject, he might be, rather than studying, he might be thinking about whether I'll pass or fail, whether I'll be able to complete the test on time, whether I will be able to answer all of it or not. So what is he doing? He's taking this past experience and assuming the out or the result. But in this situation, what he has to do and what's in his control is the present, which is studying for. So they tend to forget that studying for it is more important because that's in their control. And if they study, there are chances of either passing or failing 50-50. But if they keep on worrying about the outcome, there are 100% chances that they are not going to clear the exam. So this causes anxiety and hypertension, and it might lead to maybe, rapid heart rate or sweating or shivering or feeling cold, having cold feet, or feeling pain in different parts of the body, or feeling pressure or heaviness on your chest.
So hypertension, need to different heart, overreact heart. Thinking can be way over what it needs to be. And as a result, you can actually get stressed from it, very heavy effects on the body. So try to think of hypertension as preventive instead of actually happening to you. I is isolation or inferior complex. Well, if you're isolated, you're alone, typically that can deal with more negative emotions. Inferiority, is interesting.
Yeah. So let's start with isolation because there's not much to talk about it because it's just a part of seeing depression, a part where you feel that being isolated is a better option than going in contact with people. Or this can also happen in case of people having social anxiety. So they feel that, being away from a public place or being away from in a large group of audience or a large group of people is better because that creates anxiety for them. So that's there. And the second thing was inferiority. So that can happen to anyone today because of all kinds of social media, I would say. Because so many things are happening. So when you see that someone is doing so well, just because they are putting stories or reels or certain things posts on the social media about their achievements, but they are not aware that what's going behind us. And I always say that, we generally tend to compare ourselves with people who are higher to us, and we tend to get that there are people who are lower to us and who are at the equal state as well. So there's always going to be people above equally standing beside you and below you. So it's just better to compare yourself with your past performances, your past achievements, because you'll always find yourself growing in that situation.
Yeah.
And
So,
inferiority complex can come in with the way you were also, brought up to some extent, because if your feelings, if your emotions were not validated or not, appreciated enough, this can lead to a self-doubt. This can lead to whether I'm doing good enough and what, why my parents are not, appreciating me or appreciating my efforts, or maybe why they're comparing, there's a constant comparison with others' kids. So all of these can also lead to inferiority.
Yep. All right. So let's go with number L. So L is learning disability. Learning disability in this fact is very much what people need to know about. So with it, people have different ways to learn. As a result, there is different psychological conditions in which affects learning. You have go back to ADHD, ADD, how your attention deals with it. Typically with a learning disability, you get a diagnosis, autism is affected, dementia, also reading letters, comprehension of math, weak comprehension. It has a variety of factors and affects you. Typically, it's done in the school scene through IEP and IO4s, but as well, it gives an individual learning plan to those who have it and gives us the ability to have a case manager, how to do it. Sometimes you have special education, which is also impacted depending if they're weak in another subject or subjects at hand. Basically, what I'm telling you is if you have someone with a learning disability, they're not any different than you. They just have to do extra steps. Also, if you're the one that has it, don't feel like you are weak with someone else, someone that doesn't have, because it's what you have. It's basically go through it and do your best.
Yes. So
That very much affects teens because they have typically a negative stigma ties to it, and it creates feelings that leads to isolation, to depression, stress. So it has lots of big impact, but the importance is to understand it and not be judgmental. So in social circles of teenagers, it's very important to realize just because it's someone else has a learning disability doesn't mean you should actually make them feel isolated. You should make them feel welcome.
correct. So see, there can be different types of learning disability. There is dyslexia, there is dyspraxia, there is reading disability, writing disability, or unable to focus, as we spoke about ADD. So there can be various learning disorders, but if we go ahead and do each one of them, it will take a lot of time. So overall, I would say what you mentioned is correct. Recognizing that okay, this child is facing some and not is just making is indisciplined or is just trying to avoid classes. Because see, many times what we say, maybe the child is unable to see the blackboard or the whiteboard from a distance. Maybe he's facing issues with seeing visually, maybe, or there's something that he's unable to understand or comprehend instructions at that pace. Maybe his pace is a little lower than other people. So in that situation, the best thing works is an IEP program, which is individualized education for the child. And there are other options available as well, where they can try to help the child, because there are children with autism, there are children with ADHD, there are children with dyslexia who need special attention, which is okay. They just need to accept it. And I know there are special schools or special educators, which is great, but then it gives them a sense. Of course, being in a school with people of the same concern is great because they understand you better. But somehow or the other, I also feel that it isolates them from people who do not have this. So they fail to understand later, like how to behave or act around those people.
So M and N, we're gonna do pretty much quickly in this category. We had multi-personality disorder. That's disassociative as well as the new term. People have two or more personalities in their consciousness, and these other personalities we call them alternative personalities. So each one has maybe a name, an age, or a background that personality has. You have the main host, and as a result, they all want to experience what the host is living as well. So sometimes the alternate personality takes over for whatever amount of time the host is put back consciousness. The alternative personality is literally in the eyes of that person at that time when the takeover happened. And this takeover could be a long period of time or a short period of time, depending on the effect what is happening. So there's different triggers in people's environment that may push an alternative personality to come out sooner than later.
Yes, and let's take up N also, which is narcissistic. So we can cover both together.
Yeah.
So when we come to personality disorders, I generally am of the opinion that that is not something we can change, because that's something that you have been catering to or addressing throughout your childhood. Those are your traits. You cannot change your traits. You can modify your behaviors, and to an extent where you can balance yourself in the society, work, and balance your life overall. So with personality disorders, it's mainly about balancing and learning how to, adhere to the norms of the society. So basically, whether it's dissociation or whether previously, which is called multiple personality disorder, is people having two or more, I would say one or more personalities at the same time. And it could be triggered by different situations. Like one personality could be triggered by some social setting anxiety. The other could be triggered by some family setting. The third personality might be triggered by good relationships. So there can be people who are very good, but in the social settings, you see, they can be completely different. So that can stem from the environment, the triggers, and the people they are around them. And of course, there is to some extent the role of genetics, which is hormonal imbalance as well. So along with medications for balancing hormones and therapy, they can at least learn to balance their lives. And when we come to narcissistic personality, it's basically a personality where the person is more concerned about self. It's more mainly about I, me, myself, and the person or the individual feels that I should be the center of attention. People should work according to me, or if I work in a room full of people, they should, the attention should all be on me. And if that doesn't happen, they try to seek attention.
Yep. So now that's multiple personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. Let's go to OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. The pattern of unwanted thoughts and fears that leads to repeated behaviors and typically obsessions and compulsions can impact daily life, and it cause a lot of stress depending on what's happening. It affects your time management. If you're OCD, you take longer. Depending on what it is, your OCD, you do it in a certain way. And also, when the OCD happens, sometimes it can be very detrimental to your health. Depending on the behavior you're doing that's associated with the OCD obsession.
So again, like ADHD, there are two parts here. It could be either which is OD, which is obsession disorder, or it could be compulsive nature. So it combines obsessive thoughts. So obsession is basically related to thoughts. You could have an obsession towards maybe say watching something sexual or having fantasizing about something. So these just the obsession is mainly related to thoughts, and it's mainly going on a loop, or you can't control those even if you want to, but you're unable to do. And whereas in compulsion, it's mainly about behaviors like washing your hands 10 times a day, or checking the lock whether you've locked your house or flat or not, checking whether you've switched the button off of your stove. So these are certain examples of compulsive behavior. And thoughts could also be like, you always feel dirty enough when there's rain, or to feel that, you don't want to go out because, and this could be triggered by a past incident. Like maybe once you were in an incident where you forgot to lock your flat or something, and there was an robbery or something was set on fire because of your mistake. So then that becomes a fear that I need to check. So the thing that best works with OCD is behavior therapy and combined with cognition. So basically I would say CBT, because it works both on your thoughts as well as your behavior patterns. And it takes time with OCD to, start reducing the patterns of behaviors, because it's been built over a long period of time. So it's similar to personality, that it will take time to improve or modify on.
All right. So that's a little snapshot of mental health from A to Z, what we can cover. Any closing thoughts you want us to share?
Yeah, we can talk.
So closing thoughts for this is, doesn't matter what mental health or factor of mental health you have, try to navigate the best you can. If not, get some help. Help is always available. Sometimes you might not know it's help, but it is. So go seek it. Go try to be part of it. Try to navigate the issue or the factor of mental health. Try to figure it out. And you're not alone in it. So the assistance that you get along the way is very vital, and how you think about it affects you as well.
Yes, basically it's all about reaching out for help, which people find it really difficult to do. But, and I understand that why, because maybe they've never been in that setup where they can reach out. But honestly, if you reach out for help, that is for your own benefit and it will help you eventually. So the first step is good enough, because the first session can help you understand whether you want to just come in at least for the first session to understand where you are and where your mindset is at.
So this concludes Teenage Youth episode for mental health from A to Z. Before we go, please reintroduce yourself, where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I also have a website. If you want, I can drop it on chat.
All right.
If you want me to drop it on the chat, or you can find me on YouTube as well. I do get videos out mostly on mental health, and it's under the name of Therapist Simran.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Artlist.io.
Feel alive, let's hit the dance floor. Don't work too hard, might break a backbone. Return of the Mac, the king is back though. Corvette and cash, I never like those. She saw the stone, you know how that go. Fatality, my diamonds that cold. Versace trunks, I hit my backstroke.